All right, what's up, guys? Back here, Southeastern 14 reaction show. Blayne joining as always. I decided to hop on this week, Blayne. Probably a good week. I decided to hop on, right? Like this, it's
No
been
doubt.
nuts today. Nuts, man.
Absolutely crazy. I mean, that's what we've come to know here in the 2023 in the SEC. Expect the unexpected because that's what's going to happen in this league. We've talked about parity. I don't think it's parity. I just think it's craziness. I mean, absolutely teams each and every week, you don't know what you're going to get identity wise out of these teams. And, some of them are still searching for it. And all the Kentucky faithful in here, I just want to say, I am your guy. I predicted Kentucky to go 10-2 this year, at least over there, maybe 11-1, and they are off to the start. But I did have it wrong, Blake, because I thought it would be Devin Leary driving the bus, and it is Ray Davis driving the bus.
Ray Davis driving the bus. He's driving everything right now.
Welcome
But
in, Chris.
yes, Chris is here. Hello, Chris. I'm going to talk about my Kentucky bet this week while Chris is getting set up. But I told Chris earlier in the week, I said, and you, Chris, you were questioning me here, and I understand because you saw firsthand the part of the game, well, all the game against Vanderbilt that Kentucky played. But I told you, I said, Chris, I have no idea why Kentucky is only at the time it was like 2.5 point favorite against Florida. And then that line started moving towards Florida. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, but I said, I'm not ready to declare Florida just yet a team that I'm going to fully buy into until they win this kind of game on the road against a good team. And I know people say, well, Florida or Kentucky hasn't played anybody. They've been inconsistent, all that. But I just thought this was a great spot for Kentucky. And, obviously it turned out that way. But yeah, I haven't been all the way with Blayne, but like I've been getting there in terms of like Blayne was all in on Kentucky from the start. And I know Devin Leary's had some inconsistencies and all that, but I mean, this was the kind of game that when you got a Ray Davis, you can do some good things with a guy like that leading the way.
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there on them. I just did not really know with either team what to make of them because there's been times where Florida's looked pretty good. There's been times where Kentucky looked pretty mediocre. And Kentucky looked great today. I mean, Ray Davis, I saw him a ton last year. I didn't know Ray Davis had this in him. I said, guys, he's a guy that's a good receiver. He can pass protect. He can do a lot of stuff that maybe gets overlooked. But the one thing I said about him was, hey, he's not a breakaway guy, right? He's not a breakaway. Oh, Ray Davis goes and has blown all that up in the first few weeks. And look, maybe it's he's playing behind a better offensive line than the assemblage of whatever that is that Vanderbilt has thrown out there the last couple of years. I just saw that mess today, getting home from that. But yeah, I mean, that was, he's tremendous. And I think Kentucky left some meat on the bone today, guys. I mean, I didn't think that.
Yeah, they took the foot off the accelerator, I think.
Well, but I mean, Leary missed a couple opportunities early. It was just continued inconsistency. And Ray Davis just said, screw that all. I'm going to bail all you guys out.
Hey, real quickly, guys, just to quickly add in, if you're hopping in here, we try to let everybody get in at the start. But as always, check out that scroll at the bottom. We are looking for advertiser sponsors for this show and all our other shows here on the channel. Caroline.smith at southeastern14.com. Reach out to her, and we'd love to have you sponsor, advertise here on our show, any show we have here at Southeastern 14. But please continue, Blayne.
Particularly if you're inebriated right now, please send Caroline an email. Let her know that your business would love to sponsor us, and then we'll go from there. Also, you can get a nice little discount if you've enjoyed game day, but you're still a little bit hungry at the end of the day. You need a quick snack. Get some CHOMPS, okay? They got 3 different. You got venison, you got beef, you got turkey, all kinds of good stuff. So check that out in the description as well. We'll have that going in the description, I'm sure. So. Back to you, Chris.
Back to you, Chris. Like Brick Tamlin reporting live.
There's a comment there, but I'll just leave it. Man, what a whirlwind of games that LSU.
Can we talk about LSU Ole Miss? Let's just get into that one real quick.
I didn't get to see much of it, but the last 5 minutes was, I think, looked like indicative of the way the whole game was played.
Just nuts, man. I mean, look.
What happened to LSU's defense? I mean, did we not think LSU had dudes on defense?
Well,
that has been, my goodness.
Let's look at last year, okay? There were lapses last year, and then they lost. They lost, a bunch of secondary members had to go in the portal, and we thought, okay, well, we just trust this offense so much, which that turned out to be pretty good. This offense is pretty good that they'll score enough points that the defense doesn't have to be great. But we didn't know that it was going to be hashtag hot dog water, as I like to say, and they are awful. Can't stop anybody. Over 700 yards of offense for Ole Miss in this game. And I think, Blake, Jackson Dart put himself squarely in the Heisman race tonight.
Look, I mean, after last week, I think we all said, like, that was such a huge game. You felt like for the psyche of Ole Miss last week. Like, even if you didn't win, you wanted to go in and play good and play pretty well there. They didn't play well. And, Alabama just completely shut them down. And so, to me, this was an opportunity to kind of bounce back. And you just said it. I mean, the way they bounce back, like, yeah, I think you have to fully buy in now on Jackson Dart to be able to come back with this kind of performance. He took what LSU gave him. They made a lot of big plays. And let's be honest too, guys, getting Trey Harris back was significant. We've been waiting and just kept saying, hey, when they get him back, that we know what he did in those first couple games. And so he goes for 8 receptions, 153 yards, touchdown. How many big plays did they have in this game? I came into the game talking about how many big plays LSU had made this season. What was it, like 7 guys that had plays of 38 or longer this year offensively? Ole Miss has plays in this game of 63, 56, 43, 37. And so, yeah, just pretty remarkable stuff. And hey, Brian Kelly was saying all week, and I'm trying to find the quote here, but I mean, he kept talking about the secondary. He's like, look, we got young corners, don't have a lot of experience. Safeties have to be more consistent. They're trying to do too much. Well, we saw what LSU did, or we saw what Ole Miss did to him here. And so I don't think that's going to help the problems this week. So.
No doubt, guys. If you're in here and you want to do so, you can throw us a super chat. We'll make sure to get to your questions on here. Definitely that helps out. It helps us put out more content. Greatly appreciated when you do those, and then we'll be answering questions as we go throughout. But Chris, I mean, what's your thoughts on that Ole Miss team? I know you and Neil McCready have talked over this Ole Miss team a lot, over the last couple of weeks. What are your thoughts now that they lose to Alabama, but then they come home and Lane Kiffin really gets his signature win of his career? He'd never had a big win like this before, but now he does.
Well, I think that was the thing, is the well-documented Lane Kiffin record against teams that win 8 or 9 games or whatever the stat was, where they're 1-20 or whatever. And look, we don't know what LSU is going to end up, but it seems like it's that kind of team. And they go to Alabama, what seems to be a golden opportunity. They wet the bed. I'm not going to say Lane Kiffin's on the hot seat, but certainly he's done some stuff that's built up, right? You had the stuff with the Auburn flirtation last year, and people kind of spent the offseason getting over that. And then he went and stirred it all up again. So I just didn't know, like, were they going to be good enough to come back from all that? The Judkins struggles have been an issue. So I just had a lot of questions about Ole Miss, and the health of their receiving core has been something we've talked about every week. So to go and get one today against LSU in a spot where, look, we've been talking ever since that Florida State game. LSU has kind of looked like a playoff team. We didn't know if it could afford, if it got another loss somewhere, if that would happen. But optics, LSU looked like a playoff team. I think for Ole Miss to answer the bell the way that it did today was really, really impressive. And defensively, there's some issues, but my goodness, Lane Kiffin showed us why he's an offensive genius again.
Do you realize, though, that I know we say hot seat and stuff like that if things don't go well, but did we realize that Lane Kiffin, with his victory tonight, I think he just tied Houston Nutt as the 8th ranked all-time winningest coach in Ole Miss history. So and before the end of the year, he'll be the 7th ranked winningest coach in Ole Miss history. So he's doing some pretty incredible things in a program that has had peaks of success at different times, but Blake, it hadn't been consistent. He's turned it into a pretty consistent winner over there.
Yeah, one of the things I said coming into this game and why I think I was like, maybe I pick LSU here is I think Ole Miss fans have said it. Like, you've been waiting to see them win a game against it, like what feels like an elite team, like a top tier team. Because last year, right, we talked about the schedule. They did a lot of the work up front against teams that weren't quite to that level. And they started losing to the teams that were better than them, is what most, thought. And so I think they were just searching for like, what's that next sort of big signature type win? It feels like this is it. Again, just based on what our expectations were for LSU, and like Chris said, the way they'd been playing recently. And yeah, I mean, this was huge for them guys, because now, you start to look ahead. This is where you can start having fun with looking ahead. I mean, they get Arkansas next week, and we'll talk about them in a second. That could be trouble for the Razorbacks. They get a week off, then they go to Auburn, Vanderbilt after that, A&M at home after that. Like, now you're really starting to look at this for Ole Miss, I think, looking ahead. But as we know, every week in a week like this is just completely wild. You never know what's going to happen. But this was the performance bouncing back from that Alabama game you absolutely wanted to see.
Guys, they had
Speaking of
706 yards today. 706.
Well, and speaking of Alabama too, I do want to say that Mississippi State has been moving the ball up and down the field on Alabama tonight. They weren't able to punch it in the red zone, but man, they are starting to really move the football on them. So I'm just telling you, I think as a whole, not only the SEC, Chris, as you've mentioned several times, but college football as a whole, I just, like you said, Blake, every single week, you can't look too far ahead because you don't know what you're going to get out of these teams every week, really.
No.
Well, in Georgia, I mean, Georgia's like the one thing that we sort of, the closest thing we feel like a team we can hang our hat on. I mean, Georgia had to white knuckle it to the finish line today against Auburn. Trailed by 10 points in the first quarter.
You ready for my take on Georgia?
Let's go.
All right, here's the deal. I've been very, very critical of the Georgia football team in terms of when they've played teams that are much lesser competition, aka not SEC teams, UT Martin, Ball State, UAB, because I thought I saw some things that were not great habits, weren't disciplined on defense at times, and that reared its head today in the run game against Auburn and things like that. But I will tell you this win for Georgia was incredibly important for them going forward in terms of how it happened. Carson Beck had a missed touchdown throw to Oscar Del Pearly, and then he had an interception that kind of his fault, kind of not. The guy came through the back of Marcus Rosemy. Jack Saint made a really good play. Hey, that's a ball you got to try to fit in there. That's fine. But in the second half of that game, Carson Beck goes 16 of 20 and just rips off over 200 yards of passing in the second half and has a humongous day and leads a incredible drive at the end where Brock Bowers just showed why he's maybe the greatest tight end to ever play the game of college football. I mean, he's really,
oh my
really
goodness. That play was incredible.
I think even though it's not, a dominant win like we've seen Georgia do sometimes in the past, that's going to pay dividends for Georgia going forward, Blake and Chris, because Carson Beck, I think, realized today, hey, I belong in this league. I can do this, because Auburn is not bad defensively at all. They are not. They've got some good players, good guys on the back end. Asante, the linebacker, is a stud. Jalen McLeod does some good things. So I think this is going to pay off for Georgia. They got to get the running game figured out a little bit because their running backs are all kinds of a mess. I think they need to move Dylan Bell over there permanently for that. But I think this was a huge, huge step forward for Carson Beck.
Yeah, I agree. I thought, and Blayne and I mentioned this before we started recording, but yeah, I mean, just think about just some big plays, big throws, put them in a position, right there at the end. And that's all you can really ask for. It doesn't matter if you're the team that's a 2-time defending national champion and all this, but like, you just have to put yourself in a position on the road in the SEC to have a chance to win the game at the end. And they did that. And again, that's what you want to see out of a guy that's leading your team and taking over such a prestigious position now at Georgia, where it's like, hey, you're expected to go in and win a national championship every year. And this was kind of that, like Blayne said, maybe call it a turning point, whatever you want to call it. But like, this was a big step forward, I thought. And, I said going into the game, we talked about this yesterday, Chris, on the Daily Show. I said, hey, these are two teams that start slow. Like, these are two teams this season that have just not put up a lot of good offense early on. And I thought this played into Auburn's hands right off the bat. Is they came out early and like, all right, let's kind of maybe punch them in the mouth a little bit and let's see what happens here. And I think the way the game set up, you're like, okay, Auburn's going to have a chance here till the end, probably because of how they started. And I said the common theme: Missouri game last year for Georgia, South Carolina
Look at what
game this
Christopher
year.
Black said. He said when Georgia almost lost to Missouri last year, they had 3 turnovers. Today, Georgia had 2. And that you go look at the box score, it's not like Georgia played terrible. They were great on third down. It was just turnovers, and then Auburn turned those 2 turnovers into points. That is exactly what happened in this game.
Yep. That's the formula. So,
Blayne, I want to ask you something because I'm looking at the box score, and I watched bits and pieces of that game. I know the rushing yards, Auburn had 219. I know a lot of that came on that 61-yard Peyton Thorne run at the first of the game. You take that out of it, and they're 42 carries for $150-ish, and they threw for 88 yards. Was that a case where you thought Georgia's defense was pretty good, excepting that one play?
I thought Georgia's defense was pretty good, except on a couple of key times they lost contain. And the problem with it is Georgia plays, Chris. I don't know how much you've watched on the back end of stuff in terms of looking how they align and stuff, but a lot of times Georgia will align in such a way, like put their defensive end head up on a tackle where it looks like, hey, nothing else is out there on the edge. Well, the reason they can do that is because they have safeties that can come from 10 yards deep and be force players. Well, a couple of times they were a little bit late coming down and making that, and then they had some missed tackles on the perimeter. So I think setting the edge and keeping contain has been a little bit of a struggle for Georgia in the early going of that, which is not characteristic. I mean, Tyke Smith has played incredible for Georgia, but even him, he had 3 missed tackles out on the perimeter today that hurt him in some key situations. Not enough to let Auburn break it, but just enough to let them extend drives a couple of times. I think they were 5 for 15 on third down or something, Auburn was. So it wasn't like they kept going, extending drives, but Georgia just enough to, how the clock rules are now. You just get one first down in a drive. That helps shorten the game a little bit with the way things are now. So I don't think Georgia's got to hit the panic button on defense. I think they've just got a couple of things that they'll clean up, and they'll be all right. That I'm intrigued about the Kentucky matchup next week because most of Kentucky's power running game is actually built through the middle. It's not like it's not like a power sweep on the outside type thing that Georgia faced with Auburn, and they have no threat of quarterback run with Leary. So I think it's going to be a great game between Georgia and Kentucky next week, night game in Athens.
Guys, again, we got a lot of people in here. So if you want to get your chat thrown on the screen, we're trying to keep up with these, but frankly, we're not going to be able to get to all of them. The best way to do that is leave us a super chat. It can be literally 1 cent, but if you leave a super chat, we will not miss it in the comments that are scrolling through on the back part here of our software. So if you want to have your comment highlighted, send us a super chat.
It's Sonny Parker. He's been with Blayne all year. That's right. Kentucky, riding the Kentucky train right here. Me and Sonny over here. But I will say, Sonny, I was totally wrong on why I thought Devin Leary was going to be a stud. How about your guy, Mike Wright there, Chris, with a touchdown against Alabama, 15-yard touchdown run a little while ago?
Well, I'm watching Tennessee, South Carolina, so I missed that. I've only got one screen where I am, but and this touchdown is coming back for a block in the back. But what has happened to South Carolina's special teams? Just gave up a touchdown again, maybe block in the back sprung that, but that was goodness. It looked like they even dropped the coverage just wasn't there on that. And by the way, South Carolina's problems, we thought Tennessee could. We circled the ways that Tennessee could expose South Carolina tonight, starting with a disruptive front seven that gets after the passer. And boy, have we seen that. Spencer Rattler nearly stepped out of the end zone for safety a minute ago. And it feels like Carolina is hanging on by a thread in some ways. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that here tonight in Knoxville.
Yeah, they're always hanging by a thread over there in Columbia. That's just how it
goes. I think we need to be more generous than that. I think I'll put it. I think Shane Beamer has got everything he could squeeze out of the talent so far, but you could tell that they're kind of hanging on by the Rattler-Leggett combo, and you're just thinking, okay, the pass rush that you get him hit one time, and that could be over for him. I think the drop off from him to Doty or whoever their two is is going to be huge. And again, special teams is the one thing that we've been able to count on for them. And with that sort of removed, that eats into the margin for error a little bit more too. So,
guys, we're 20 minutes in, and there is a team that is 5-0 right now.
I saw him
in another Columbia, and you were there, Chris. The Missouri Tigers, 5-0. My bold prediction came true. It's probably the only one of the 14 teams we did. Probably the only one that came true. Because I think another one was like some of them just are not going to come true. But that one somehow did. And Missouri is 5-0 heading into a game against an LSU team that has multiple losses now. So think about that, which I know LSU probably won't be too happy, but still, I mean, the setup is there for a wild game, Tiger versus Tiger next week. Battle of the jungle between those two next week. And so
the Jungle Cats and Como.
That's it. Like, that is what's going to happen next week when those two teams play. But Chris, your thoughts on the Missouri Tigers, which you saw in person today. I don't know if my guy Dennis Gates was there, but still, I'm sure it was a pleasant experience for the Missouri fan base to see their team move to 5-0.
Okay, let's start here with Missouri. Let's start by saying Vanderbilt does not generate a pass rush without help. So they didn't really put Brady Cook under a lot of duress today. Vanderbilt also started 2 freshman corners. So there's that was, it's a little bit easier when you're facing that. But that said, man, he threw the ball about 40 times today. I don't know that he threw one bad ball all day. He hit 3 different guys for touchdowns. I think if you're Missouri, Theo, we stepped up today, I think had 10 or 11 catches, had 7 in the first half. They really got Burden going in the second half. They threw Luther Burden 2 touchdowns, which one of these over-the-shoulder things. One of them, he's looking back into the sun. Ball was thrown perfectly. He made a great play. So I want to give a shout-out to Brady Cook because I know that Vanderbilt has got the worst defense in the league. And again, magnified by playing freshman corners. But, man, I don't think that Brady Cook threw a bad ball all day. I think that we have really slept on him as a player. I think you could argue, and there's a lot of season to go, guys, a lot of season to go. I think you could argue right now, if you're making the argument for first-team quarterback in this league, I think Brady Cook has got to be in that discussion. I'm not saying he's the guy. You got Spencer Rattler out at South Carolina. We've talked about him, running for his life, making plays. With Brady Cook, it's been a little bit. He's got a little bit more offensive. Well, he's got a lot more offensive line help, but was super impressed with what he showed today.
Yeah, no, he's playing really great. Missouri is. We came into the year knowing that they're so experienced on defense, and they just have so much talent over there on that side of the ball. But goodness gracious, Luther Burden and then Brady Cook playing that way, I think that's really good. How about this, guys? I'm just got to thinking about it. With the way Kentucky's playing, and they're coming to Athens next week, and then a few weeks later, after the Florida game, Missouri comes into Athens, and then Ole Miss is going to come to Athens. People wanted to talk about Georgia's schedule being the easiest schedule out there and everything. As Deion Sanders says, that might be a little bit of bull junk now because those guys are that's some sporty teams that are going to be rolling into Athens. So I think there's going to be some really good games over in the Northeast Georgia area before too long.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that game in Lexington.
This is guys. Sorry, I was pulling that up too, Blayne. Yeah, that's a good question though, right? We have to look at the schedule, I guess, next week. But it's
Texas A&M, Bama,
and Texas, Oklahoma too next week, right? So I wonder if that's, but I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe yeah.
But I'm sure like big noon kickoff or something depends on if they want to double dip over there.
Yeah, that's right.
With all that kind of stuff. Listen, guys, Alabama's 17-10 with Mississippi State, and with 3 minutes to go in the second quarter. Now Bama's got the ball and they're driving a little bit, but this is a Bama team, much like we talked about Georgia. I think it's Carson Beck like with what he did today. I think they're gonna get more and more explosive offensively, but I don't know if it's a team that can just pull away from people offensively like they've done in the past. And I don't know that Bama is either.
That would worry me, I think. And that's why, as I guess one of the expert betting guys now with my show with Brian Edwards. I feel like Brian's just like making me bet all these games.
You're
And
getting
so
betting tips through osmosis.
I think so. But listen, just quickly on that, Kentucky, I'd like to thank you. Auburn, I'd like to thank you for keeping it within 14.5. Remember, good teams win, great teams cover. That's how this thing works. I'd like to thank Ole Miss, 2.5. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. With Alabama, I just don't know that, yes, there are some teams that if Alabama was a 21-point favorite against Vanderbilt, I'd probably be fine with that. But like, it's just I don't trust the offense enough to like feel like they are multiple touchdown or 10 to 12 like points right now, especially on the road. Like it would worry me just based on what we've seen so far. So
Like they were averaging what was it under 6 yards a play coming into tonight? And I think it was about that much under, but still, I mean, that's not
Who's that?
Alabama.
Which team?
Alabama,
yeah. Well, Milroe just completed a clutch third down. Now, if he can do stuff like that, then that helps out Alabama a lot because they're going to have time for him to throw a lot of times against a lot of these pass rushes. Now, you're not going to face a pass rush like Texas, like they did early on every week. So when he's got time and he can go through reads and stuff, he's got plenty of a strong arm. But I just worry about, sometimes him getting locked on guys and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to watch this Georgia offense going forward, the Alabama offense going forward. But Kentucky and Missouri are right there with people now.
Poor Donovan. Just for everyone in the comments knows, Donovan, the resident Auburn fan, goes to the game, cheering on his team. He bets on Georgia to try to hedge things. Loses the bet. His team loses. It's just, but he said he got a red zone Chick-fil-A sandwich for free earlier. So at least he got something out of this deal. Congratulations, Donovan. It's almost basketball season.
Not only has this Saints for Christ Nation says Kentucky has won every single game so far this year by double-digit points. Not only that, but they have started for the first time since I believe 2007. They've scored at least 28 points in every game that they've played in, which that may not sound like a astronomical number, but for Kentucky offensive standards, even through the Stoops era, being that consistent and being able to put that up, that number of points with that good of a defense, guys, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys. One game we haven't talked about yet: Arkansas and A&M. I've seen some Arkansas fans in the comments. I mean, if we had to pick job security rankings after this week, I mean, I'd say Sam Pittman's fallen pretty far into that. Whatever, I don't. Is he the top one? I mean, I don't know. Is it somebody I'm forgetting?
But my question is, who do you think that if you're Arkansas, and you guys may know better in terms of the administration and that kind of thing, who do you really think you can go out and get that is going to be an improvement over? Because you're not going out and getting a name like a Kiffin or a Lincoln Riley or one of those type names that's going to be flashy and stuff like that. It's probably going to be a blue collar type guy or maybe a coordinator elevated up. I don't think you're going to get somebody making a lateral move from like the Big Ten or the SEC to Arkansas. So are you kind of say, hey, we got to ride it out with Pittman for the rest of the season and see what happens?
Are you asking what's going to happen or what they should do?
Yeah, what they could do.
Blake, I'll let you start.
No, I mean, I certainly sense the frustration now for Arkansas fans. And I think the frustration was there before this week. It started after the BYU. It started at times last year, but I think after the BYU game, LSU game, yeah, you put yourself in a position to win. It still comes down as another loss. This game where I felt like with the way the game was going a little bit early on, they get down, they make some plays and put themselves in a position, but like they just were never able to kind of convert when they had those opportunities to really, maybe take control of the game or put themselves in front and find a way to stay there. But I mean, Blayne brings up a point too. Like it is always a question of, I don't think Arkansas is probably the only fan base that's asked that question before in terms of, it's like you make a move after this year or something, is it better off staying kind of in, maybe you're not competing for the SEC West every year title, but maybe it's once every 5 years. I don't know. I mean, those are the questions that I know fans are asking, and I know they're frustrated though.
Yeah, here's two things, and maybe this is just I like Sam Pittman. I don't know the guy. I like him. I root for him personally. I'm glad he's in this league. I think he makes it a better, more interesting league. Have we not forgotten how bad that situation was that he took over?
Yeah, with Chad Morris.
With Chad Morris and how quickly he made that. Because I thought that program was a couple of years away from respectability. No, let's not forget, not too long before he took that job, Arkansas and Vanderbilt played in Fayetteville, and Vanderbilt won that one decisively. Which should have probably told you something. I don't really understand why the patience with him has gotten short. I have a feeling, and like I have nothing against big expectations. It's the SEC. It's a big boy league that comes with the territory.
Big aspirations.
Big aspirations. That's
big
right.
aspirations. That's a T-shirt coming soon.
But I mean, and I would love to hear from Arkansas fans on this. But you look around, Dave Van Horn has got Arkansas contending for national titles every year in baseball. Eric Musselman's had it going in basketball since he got there. They're always good in track and field. I think they've, been good at, I don't really follow women's basketball, but they've been pretty good in that at times recently. It's one of those things where you look around and it seems like they're doing a lot of winning with other programs. And so sometimes that becomes hey, wait a minute. All these other sports are winning. Why isn't our biggest sport winning? And I wonder if Sam Pittman suffers from some of that.
I think today too, and I'm just going to bring this question up, Blayne, because I know you specifically made a video on this going into the season. So we can talk about it from an Arkansas standpoint. And I know, again, there's probably not a lot of Arkansas fans in here necessarily, unless they just want to vent their frustrations. But we can't discount the other side of this thing too. A&M, I think, is becoming the team that, Chris, you said last year, I was higher on A&M probably than anybody last year, but you said, maybe we just wait a little bit and see how this plays out. And Jimbo said this was going to be the year. Last year he said this was going to be the year that this was going to come together. And so Blayne said, he made the video, why Texas A&M can win the SEC West this year. And now that you're seeing how this thing is unfolding, Blayne, they're right there.
Yeah, no, I just think the talent across that defensive front is really starting to come to fruition. They totally shut down Arkansas's run game today. They made KJ Jefferson uncomfortable. I said last week, people asked me on players section with Tavares King and Noshawn Marino, which by the way, we do that during the week as well. So another reason to subscribe, turn on notifications, all that kind of stuff. I said that I just think even with Max Johnson at the helm, they have the weapons on the outside. They have the quality play along the lines of scrimmage that I just think they're, especially with Alabama and LSU and Ole Miss kind of, picking each other off. I think A&M is just a quality football team. And I think Bobby Petrino being injected into that situation very similarly to Kirby Moore being injected into the situation at Missouri for Eli Drinkwitz, I think it has freed up Jimbo Fisher to take care of some of the small things that were maybe going missed when he was game planning and stuff like that. And I really think that A&M is going to be clicking on all cylinders. This is not a game I don't think that Alabama is really looking forward to going into College Station next week. I like the Aggies a lot, Chris.
Yeah, I think the question was, can they win the West? I think, why can't they win the whole thing, being the league at this point?
I was going to ask, I don't know if any of us will do it this week, but there's someone out there that's going to put Texas A&M at number one in their SEC power rankings this week, ahead of Georgia. Now, I'm not saying I agree with it. I don't know. We still got a day before we submit ours, but I wouldn't say I would just be completely. Blayne knows where I'm going here. He knows I'm going Ric Flair on this one. To be the man, you got to beat the man. So Georgia's still the man until somebody beats them, in my opinion. But if you're just talking about, again, maybe what you've seen altogether, A&M had that one bad game, which Georgia's not had that bad game to that extent yet. But I wouldn't be shocked to see someone out there put A&M. And that goes off what you just said, Chris. You could certainly make the argument that, hey, maybe they can win this whole thing. So
you're saying that Georgia,
Desmond Howard was a year too early.
So you're saying that Georgia has spent more money on spilt liquor than Texas A&M has made in the last 2 years? No, I mean, it's just I'm just telling you that, hey, I agree. I think A&M is on the uptick, but they have a murderous stretch to go through here to even get to. I think they can. I think Georgia is still even more so than Texas A&M. When you look at Texas A&M's offensive line, Georgia is by far and away the deepest team in the country. They've got guys that are injured right now that aren't even playing, and they're still good enough to beat people when they play bad. You see what I'm saying? Like, Georgia is deep, and Georgia is gaining experience at key positions. So I still think Georgia's a long way to go. Got a long way to go, and they're only going to get better by the end of the year. People are now looking at Georgia, Chris, the same way they used to look at Alabama when a game was close. Everybody would go to the TV and say, "Is Georgia going to lose this one?" Just like Bama. Is Bama going to? But then you realize, oh wait, yeah, they got guys who can make plays when it matters, even when it is tight. You know, so I think Georgia's going to be fine, but Texas A&M is right there pushing them.
Those are the best two defenses in this league.
Kentucky's a very good defense too. I would put Kentucky in that
Alabama would be. I think Alabama would be in that conversation. Kentucky, Missouri. I don't know. Missouri would be at the front of that conversation, but I think you at least mention them before you totally dismiss them. Yeah, Missouri wouldn't be up there with Georgia and A&M. I don't think, but I think that's a good, solid team.
I know. I agree.
By the way, if you are a bettor out there, we talked about this on Brian Edwards' show this week. Alabama was a 3 to 3.5 point favorite at Texas A&M next week. I would jump on that line right now before it moves, because if Alabama and Mississippi State keep playing like this, I wouldn't be shocked if this thing keeps going down and down to the point to where A&M's the favorite next week. So anyone that's a bettor out there, get that 3 points with A&M right now if it's still there. I can't find it at the moment, but just letting you know.
What have we not hit on tonight?
I mean, we've touched on every game that has gone final. Like we said, we talked a little bit about Tennessee's up. Still a couple touchdowns on South Carolina, and the Alabama-Mississippi State game. We'll obviously, give our thoughts on that on Monday in the Blayne's morning show, and we'll have thoughts on the Daily Show and all that. But yeah, I mean, I think the theme of the week is people wanted to see if Kentucky can win beat Florida, and they did. They're 5-0. Missouri, could they make it happen to get to 5-0? They did. And here we are, with those two teams and how interesting now the East is, right? Georgia's unbeaten. Kentucky's unbeaten. Missouri's unbeaten. Tennessee's about to, at this point, looks like about to get a good win to keep things going back in the right direction. So,
well, we didn't talk about this. Brew McCoy had a brutal injury, and that's sad for him because he's probably going to miss his time may be done in Tennessee, because I don't know if he's planning on going pro after this or what, but not great for him. You got to just prayers for best recovery possible.
What was the injury? Because I was listening to that game on the radio, and the broadcast crew was very careful in its wording and would not really talk specifics. They just said the ambulance was ready pretty quickly, and
it was similar to a Marcus Lattimore type deal.
Oh boy!
If you remember that injury, it was really bad. Willis McGahee, that kind of injury. It was rough.
Yeah.
By the way, Play to Win's asking here, where's A&M in the title? Guys, just so you know, we have limited space in our title. We can't make the title with every single team in there. So, we're not being selective. We're just picking the ones that
and also, in our opinion, A&M kind of did what they should have done. I mean, honestly, Arkansas didn't play. It hasn't played inspired football. But A&M, I think next week you'll see if A&M is going to be in the title.
Response here, Pedro's response in Texas. I appreciate that, Pedro. Yes, but yeah, I mean A&M, we're not knocking A&M. It's just that's the space we have to work with on YouTube. So that game probably wound up not being one of the thrilling games today, if you really think about it. So,
and it happened a long time ago.
I was gonna say, I feel like that game happened yesterday at this point. It was forever ago. So
I just want to ask you,
is Davis the best running back in the SEC right now? I think by far and away he's got to be, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I want to ask you what surprised you guys the most today, because I have two things, and one of them, just to spoiler alert, it's Ray Davis. I knew Ray Davis was a good back. I didn't know Ray Davis was a almost rushed for 300 yards kind of against Florida kind of back. But and I've got one more thing, but I want to hear from you two first.
I would just say the not that Georgia started. So I think some of the undisciplined things they did in terms of the lack of contain or the lack of awareness sometimes, like, hey, you're doing a 4-man rush and you get really wide in your rush lanes and go past the quarterback in man coverage and allow him to rush out. That's stuff you typically don't see Georgia do. I think they'll get that cleaned up defensively, but I would just say the lack of discipline in small areas defensively for Georgia was kind of a surprise for me.
I mean, I didn't think there was a ton of just huge surprises today. I mean, I think that if I had one, it'd probably be that I just thought Arkansas would play a better game. I mean, maybe that's it. Like, I don't know if that's shocking based on the inconsistency there, but I didn't, they're down 34-16 fourth quarter. Like, I don't know. We kept saying that it's a weird game sometimes, and it feels like they always find a way to play close games. But I just thought that Arkansas had some opportunities. They didn't take advantage of it. They didn't execute. And maybe for Arkansas fans, it's not that surprising, but I just thought that I thought they'd play a lot better. So maybe that's what I did. I thought maybe they build off of, losing on a game-winning field goal last week at LSU, and maybe build off of that, but just didn't. So, I guess the only other thing, some people may say LSU giving up that many points, but I'll be honest, Chris, like I'm not stunned by that. Like I know we said going into the season their defense could be this or that, but as the season has gone along, I think it's pretty clear that they're not. They got a lot of work to do, especially again in multiple areas on the defensive side. And I mentioned the quote earlier from Brian Kelly on the secondary. So,
well, guys, I think first of all, Blayne, to your comment about Georgia, when I was watching that game and I saw Peyton Thorne break off that huge run to start the game, I'm like, man, I haven't seen Georgia give up a run like that in forever, where there just was nobody there for a long stretch of that run. So, yeah, I think that was a little bit shocking, but, it's Georgia still won the game. And Blayne or Blake, you hit on mine. LSU's defense, I get they've had issues at corner. They got a couple transfers. We saw that as an issue against Florida State. And even last week, Arkansas's got a good offense in spite of what happened today. And, Arkansas moved the ball pretty well on them. I mean, guys, we're cutting plays out of games this year. Not a lot, but you're not seeing as many 500-yard games out of teams this year as you are. 706 yards against LSU. Again, I get the struggles. How does that happen when you've got Mason Smith and you've got Harold Perkins and you've got all those guys that LSU's got that helped win them a West title last year? That to me, okay, again, if you say LSU's going to struggle a little bit, okay, I get why. If you reload a corner, it doesn't go well, that can happen. I just thought there'd be enough other parts elsewhere to buffer that loss a little bit, and that was astonishing. I mean, a week after Ole Miss gets 10 against Alabama.
Yeah, it is. It's tough to see why that hasn't. Is particularly that front. We thought they'd get so much pressure and just be so dynamic that it would cover the ills of the secondary a little bit if there were any, and that just hadn't come to fruition. And hey, that's why it's the old adage, that's why they play the games. But it's just the truth. Sometimes things pop up that you don't necessarily think are going to be the Achilles heel of a team, and they turn out to be. So LSU now out of the national championship picture. Pretty much out of the SEC West. Now there are some teams that it can be a circular firing squad there. So who knows what could happen, but yeah, I think really realistically, and how crazy is this, Blake? Your national championship hopes now out of the SEC all lie in the East with Georgia, Kentucky, and Missouri, really. And maybe Alabama if they but I have a hard time believing Alabama's going to finish out this year without another loss.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of good teams out there elsewhere in terms of taking those spots too. And so, yeah, I mean, we're seeing some of those teams that we kind of thought coming the season and elsewhere in other conferences, and they're starting to kind of make their mark. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. By the way, guys, we are going to hop off in about 5 minutes. So if you have any other comments, questions, anything like that, get them into the chat. And as we said earlier, if you want to sponsor, advertise here on our reaction show every Saturday night, the morning report every day, the daily show every day, we are looking for advertisers and sponsors on that. So reach out, caroline.smith at southeastern14.com. You can find that in the scroll below. And if you want to leave a super chat to donate to the channel, that always helps too. And again, we always appreciate your support. Your support is everything for us on this channel. So keep the super chats coming. Keep joining the It Just Means More membership tier, which we got a lot of those in here right now. And $3.99 a month, you can join on and donate to the channel.
Justin Allen said, "Why is Vanderbilt so? Or please use that firing squad."
Justin pays us $3.99 a month on the It Just Means More tier, just so he can come in and make sure his comments get featured about Vanderbilt football and his unhappiness with it.
Justin, it starts with talent. They clearly don't have enough on the lines of scrimmage. That they've got 2 freshmen playing corners. It's not good enough. I don't think it gets much better for them this year. Although, hey, Vandy, Florida, sneaky, interesting game next week, maybe. Vanderbilt Ken Seals today, by the way, if people didn't catch that, made a change at quarterback and did play better, I thought. So,
oh, wait,
no doubt.
Shout out to the Kentucky fans for pounding beers today. They listened to their coach. Congratulations to the Kentucky fans. Early start, but they were pounding. Good for them.
$19 suit, $19.99 from Guyton Bush. Hear me out. Ole Miss wins out because Georgia doesn't look that good, and I'm not really scared of any teams on our schedule. Hey, anybody can win in the SEC this year. Coming to Athens and doing it is I would caution everybody, as Blake said before, writing Georgia's obituary here, especially with the big home games they have. But they are beatable this year for sure.
Yeah, I would see that as a little more possible if that game were in Oxford rather than Athens. But who knows?
Shout out to Justin donating 5 memberships. So guys, if you're in the chat, Justin has maybe just donated a nice membership to you. So thank him there for that. But all right, Chris. Well, we've hit on every game, like I said, that's been played to this point in full. We will have additional thoughts on Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi State coming up on our shows on Monday, various places. But remember, guys, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, helps us out a ton. We always appreciate you joining us on a Saturday nights after the action. One of the wildest weeks so far, maybe the wildest week so far. So yeah, this is a lot of fun as always.
Parting thoughts, gentlemen. Start with you, Blayne.
I just think it's the SEC, and you got to buckle up this year because it is. You never know what you're going to get every single week. So I'm excited to keep doing the coverage here, and excited for a huge matchup between Georgia and Kentucky next week.
Yep, Kentucky's still unbeaten. Missouri's still unbeaten. Georgia's still unbeaten. A lot of fun possibilities here moving forward. So yeah, should be fun.
Yeah, here's mine. I think Georgia, Kentucky, a lot more interesting in my mind following today's games than coming in. Number 2, I think I'll call now. Missouri's going to beat LSU in Columbia next week.
Okay.
Missouri's just more solid across. Yeah, they are.
Next week.
That's right. And then, there was one more game. I was
Alabama and Texas A&M next week.
Oh, yes. And then the next week it's really interesting too. But yeah, I mean, there's I looked at it at first and said, I don't know about next week, but now there's 3 games I really want to see for different reasons. So at least 3.
And we'll have our previews and predictions going up on Monday, guys. You'll have those on Monday because we'll be recording all those on Sunday night. So we appreciate you tuning in with us. And like I said, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and you get all the stuff we're doing going forward, Blake.
Yep. Check it all out, guys. We got all kinds of shows every day. Like we said, morning report, daily show, Brian Edwards betting show every week. He's doing a couple now a week. So you get more betting advice there. And yeah, Jake's show, just so much fun stuff on the channel. So if you're new, jumping in for the first time after all the action, hop aboard Southeastern 14. We're having a lot of fun here.
All right. For Blayne Gilmer and Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14. We appreciate you watching. Again, you can go back and catch this whole thing on our channel. If you didn't see all of it, we'll have previews. As those guys said, we got the daily show 11 to noon every day. We got all kinds of stuff coming up. We got basketball content coming up soon, which is going to be music to the ears of a few fan bases after this week. So anyway,
probably true.
All right. For Blake and Blayne, I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you again soon.